week after week, proving that you can keep a good thing down despite your best efforts or maybe even our best efforts. It's Monday night, it's 7 p.m., and it must be Mission Log Live. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Tonight, we're starting off what will be the longest running stretch of new Trek since 2004. It's our pre-show for the newest animated series, Lower Decks, and that makes it the first new animated Star Trek series in more than 45 years.
And we are joined tonight by a very special guest. Direct from Lower Decks, the writer's room, we have Chris Kula. And spoiler, he's not animated, technically, not animated, but the show is, and he's here to answer your questions and make sure that you ask him about his t-shirt, because I'm sure he has a good story about that.
And another spoiler, there will be no spoilers discussed, so you know, don't even try. But you can get in touch with us live by clicking on the Zoom meeting link, or by using the one tap from your smartphone, or by calling 669-900-6833 and entering the meeting code. Remember, there is a password this week, maybe. You'll see that on screen, and then you'll be talking to Earl, then you'll be talking to us.
And we're really excited to have everyone back here. You know, we had our Mission Log Live from like a hiatus from last week, and this week we have Chris, so we're really excited to have him on and get him talking to you. But first of all, thanks everyone for answering the survey that we put out earlier. I believe that Chris asked us to ask you who you'd like to see in a cameo appearance on Lower Decks, an animated version of a character, quite possibly from the Next Generation era. So we're not going to say you're right or wrong. Obviously, we're going to have our preferences. And we brought up a couple last minute additions where I think we're either going to get like a thumbs up or, I don't know, maybe a groan, or maybe a groan and a thumbs up. Who knows?
Norman, I have no compunction about telling our audience whether they're right or wrong. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And I welcome our guests to do the same thing. So, look, let's see who is in the Facebook chat tonight. First of all, Spencer, right out of the gate, he says, does anyone else think that Lower Decks is going to be the Archer of Star Trek? And then Paul responds to that saying, that would be awesome. I love Archer. So who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe not. Then we have Danny. Then we have Carlos. We have Barry. We have, let's see, is that another Paul? So many Pauls. David saying hello. And it's funny, David says he has one screen on the show and one screen on Sansar. He's been playing pretty heavily in the VR game there, which we can talk about a bit. He says hello to you, hello to me. We got Kim, we got Chris, we got Joyce, we got, who else? Robert. And then there's Earl, our very own Earl, just chiming in the chat as well, saying hailing frequencies are open with that link for you to join us if you like. There's Dominic. So wonderful to see everybody joining us tonight. This will be fun. I think this is one of the rare times we've had a writer with us live to answer questions, although there's only so much he can say because the show hasn't started yet. So This will be a blast.
And remember, no spoilers, so don't even try, just like John said.
Yeah, all right.
So a little housekeeping here before we get started with the main show. Next week, we'll start our week-by-week coverage of Lower Decks with our special guest co-host. But you're going to have to wait until the end of the show to find out who that special guest co-host will be. So stick around for that.
Yes, and then right after Lower Decks, Discovery Season 3 starts on October 15th. So yes, as soon as we're done talking about Lower Decks, we won't even take a break. We will go right into Disco, 13 episodes there, and that will take us clear into January. So it's going to be a busy fall and winter for us. I'm absolutely looking forward to all of that. Hey, enough of us. Let's welcome our special guest. So Chris Kula came out of the Upright Citizens Brigade. He's been a writer on shows like Community, Mad TV, and At Midnight. He has also written sketch comedy in a number of places like Funny or Die and the Onion News Network. So, Chris, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Pleasure to have you. Were you at UCB in Chicago or LA?
I started in New York at the original UCB theater out there, and then in 2007 I moved out this way, and they'd opened up the LA theater a couple of years before that, so kind of nice having a home base to set up shop at when I got out here.
Gotcha. And I'm just curious, purely selfishly, with The Onion, when were you writing for them? Because I still to this day watch Onion News Network stuff that I think is just hilarious. Like the comedy of those just won't leave me, 10 years later or whatever.
Yeah, some of those headlines you remember for a while, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and the videos, honestly, the Franz Kafka airport, to this day, I think is one of the funniest things I've seen on YouTube.
I remember that. Yeah. I was working at that when they first launched it in New York. It was out of the Onion's Soho office where they did the newspaper, and then they were starting the web video stuff. So it was part of the initial launch of it. And it was great. The favorite one I did for them was this was a story that ended up finding its way onto Snopes because it came, people started believing it was real. It was a Make-A-Wish bankrupted by dying child's wish for unlimited wishes. They treated it like an abuse of power, it was on the morning show parody they did. And it was like,
yes,
Jim, you won't believe this. This wonderful organization has been bankrupted by this wish for, an F-14 Tomcat, regular visits from the New York Yankees, and they're doing it. They're fulfilling it. And we can only hope that this child passes away soon. So then people got outraged at that the wonderful Make-A-Wish Foundation was being
that is and look how prescient you were, because now we actually 10 years later we have to have a news channel or at least an Instagram handle called Not the Onion,
right,
in order to point out what are the stories that are real but not actually from the Onion.
Yeah, I guess that was the highest praise you could get at the time, was to believe it as truth.
Oh, God. Yeah. And those were just so well produced. So funny. Give us a little bit of your background now. You said that you came from UCB in New York. And were you really did you think you were on a path to be a performer? Was the writing always a part of it? Where did your passion lie? And did that change kind of along the route?
I got through my first level 1 grad show completely dry mouthed, terrified, afraid to get off the back wall. I was never a performer. I never had any kind of ambitions of doing that, but I knew that a lot of improvisers had come out of UCB, Second City, Groundlings, and ended up on late night shows, which was my goal at the time. So a lot of the writers from Conan or SNL had come through improv. So I was like, I guess I got to do this. So that's what got me into taking improv classes, but it was always with a mind to write. So I started writing sketch as soon as I could, and was part of a sketch group in New York, and then eventually started working on my own, writing for things like The Onion. And then I guess my big TV break was getting hired at Mad TV when that was in its last couple seasons. So that moved me out from New York to LA, and here I am now.
Very good. And then for you, since you started in sketch, do you prefer being in that world, or now you've been doing more long form and narrative stuff? Was that an easier or difficult transition? Do you like one more than the other?
It's funny because I've done some sketch. I've done some late night with Mad TV, and then At Midnight was a late night show on Comedy Central. There was a daily topical show, and the grass always feels greener with whatever you're doing when you're working on a late night show, writing, stuff, churning things out every day. You go, God, I wish I could just write something longer and dig into some characters. And then when you're in a writer's room for a narrative show, when you're bashing your head against the wall, trying to get the story to work, you're like, God, I wish I could just write some jokes. So I guess the more you're never quite happy. But right now I am definitely more, I've been doing more half-hour, narrative stuff the last 5 years or so. So that's really what I've come to find my happy place in. And this show, Lower Decks, is probably the best version of what I like doing, where it is character-based. It is, there's, genre. I mean, obviously, huge amount of genre involved. It's sci-fi. I would be happy doing fun characters if it was just a family show, but then to do it in a, setting where you can literally do anything, go anywhere, and not be constrained by any kind of conventions of, our own world, it's just so fulfilling, so satisfying.
You know, Chris, a lot of the fans out there, they usually see like someone come into a new project like Lower Decks, and they kind of like want to know who's working on it and what their Star Trek cred is. So can you tell like our listeners that are watching and who are going to be watching later, like what your background is with Star Trek, you know, how much of a fan you are, how long you've kind of like been in the fandom, in the genre?
Yeah. Well, what's kind of unique about our staff is that we run the gamut from people who've seen literally every episode of every series and can give you exact episode titles and know a ton of minutia, to people who are complete neophytes and have never seen an episode. And I fall somewhere in the middle there. Like, I grew up on the original cast movies. Like, that was my big entry into it. So like, we had a VHS tape that was probably dubbed off of like a HBO free weekend that was Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, like back to back, that we just wore out. Yeah. So like, that was my first, you know, Trek. And I loved all the original cast movies. 5, maybe not as much, but like the even ones, man, 2, 4, and 6 are so good. So like, I was big into that, and then I hadn't watched all of TNG, but I was like very familiar with all of the characters, and obviously like some of the bigger things, like I distinctly remember watching Best of Both Worlds, like syndicated. I remember I grew up in Michigan, and it aired Sunday mornings, so it was either like coming home from church or like skipping church, because our family was kind of lapsed Catholic, so we'd somehow get to see like, you know, the first run TNG episodes in lieu of confessing sins.
So it's funny, Norman, you know, somebody had asked in the chat, Dominic said, you know, favorite series, favorite Trek movie. I think we definitely got that. But Kim asked, we need the story behind Chris's shirt, Star Trek Jellicoe.
Yeah. I mean, this is my captain right here. Talk about the great captains in Star Trek history. Jellicoe is referenced more in our writer's room than probably any like famous, probably more so than Kirk, more so than Picard. Like, we're for some reason just obsessed with Jellicoe in the Chain of Command episodes, because he just comes on the bridge, and I think it's his first entry where he just walks in, like Riker's coming to greet him. He's like, "Yeah, Will Riker, class of '52, I know all about you," and just like immediately commands the room. And God, we just we really had a thing for Jellicoe. And then I found this Twitter account, which you should all throw a follow to. It's at ST Delta Shift. It's a meme account where this guy does it's Jellicoe memes. It's basically telling dad jokes with Jellicoe, like telling it to Troy or Riker, and then just a stone-faced reaction from them. It's like, it'll be like, you know, Jellicoe, Deanna, I'm taking a leave of absence. I've just gotten my dream job at the guillotine factory. I'll be heading there shortly. And then just stone-faced Troy. Oh, it's just Lord. All of that. So I was like, oh, I love this so much. So before Star Trek Las Vegas last year, the banner of that Twitter account is this image. So I used this took it to a local screen printing place and had it done up for the convention. So please, everybody, go follow at ST Delta Shift. It's hilarious.
Amazing. Also in the chat, we had somebody, Carlos, who says, I hope we get to see Starfleet toilets. Now, I don't know how much conversation you've had in the writer's room about that, but Chris Riker replied to that saying they look exactly like ordinary seats. You sit down, there's a transporter sound effect, you get up and leave. So you might be onto something. I don't know. I mean, is this the kind of thing that garners discussion when you're, you know, getting paid your huge TV writer's budget, sit around and make Star Trek jokes?
Wasting CBS's money.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
We spent a good half day discussing physics of the holodeck and whether you could use it as a bathroom, whether you could go in there and have it. What would happen to waste that was left on the holodeck? Like, if it was waste that you produced when you say arch and it goes away, would the waste still there, or could you have it, you know, be part of this? It was long discussions. I think we ended up settling on if you brought a surgical arch and like maybe use that. It involved like swallowing a silver dollar as like a, you know, sort of track
Sure.
you could, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever came to a consensus on exactly the physics of it, but we tried.
I guess it really all depends, like if the safety protocols have been turned off.
Well,
Like, I mean, that begs a
Yeah.
good question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when you're starting to, to conceptualize either plots or characterizations or ideas, where do you in the writer's room kind of fall between being irreverent, being too reverent, or second guessing yourself maybe on like, oh, if we land that joke, it's going to be amazing. If we don't, social media is going to eat us alive. How does that process work?
I mean, we'll see what social media says in a couple days when it premieres.
Or you'll turn off every device.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No.
We'll see what we've done to their. Oftentimes, what was a jumping off point for us was we'd watch episodes together and, sort of all be on the same page, usually TNG episodes, because our show is set in 2380. So it was kind of a, similar time to like post Nemesis. Voyager is back and our show is happening in a small, very lesser niche part of Starfleet. So we'd watch episodes together and look for those moments that sort of identified with our people, being the ensign rank and like the support staff. So moments like what's the first episode where the Borg, where Q shows him? Is that Q who?
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah.
So like Q, rockets them off into the Delta Quadrant or wherever they go, and they find the Borg come on the Enterprise, and there's that Borg drone like working on a console when Picard and like Worf and this like security detail come down and see that. It's just there by itself. And Picard like gives Worf an order to, take care of it or apprehend it or whatever. So you think Worf's going to spring into action. He just turns to the security guy next to him and gives him the nod. And this poor extra basically is like, well, all right. And then he goes over there and gets tossed across the room. So we're like, okay, our guy, that would be one of our characters who gets, basically delegated the shit job and then spends the rest of the episode in sick bay of like, I don't know what that thing was. It threw me across the room. I got a concussion out of it, man. So finding the small ins for our guys who are like the underappreciated characters is sort of how we started a lot of stories. That, and then also talking about our own experiences as assistant. People had like a lot of their first day jobs out in LA were as assistants or PAs. Or just any day job you had where you were, fairly unappreciated and unseen as an underling. And like Mike McMahon, the creator of the show, worked as a PA at South Park, and they would have to do like big warehouse. Like, I guess the South Park guys kept just tons of materials in their warehouse, and the PAs would have to be, do sort of cataloging of it from time to time, and they'd be left to their own devices, and the shit they would do while they were sort of out of the boss's eye, it became the inspiration for an episode of ours.
Nice.
So finding things like very human, relatable sort of situations, and then like, okay, well, if that was in Starfleet, how would that play out?
Right. Now, wait, there's so much to talk about there, and I do actually want to talk about production, because you mentioned South Park, and I want to come to that because they have a unique style and timetable for how they produce. But before we move on to anything that's remotely important or germane, I have to come back to this holodeck conversation. Because I'm thinking like, okay, if I can go to Amazon right now and I can buy a rice maker that has fuzzy logic, I think a holodeck has to have fuzzy logic as well. Because, all right, if I can go into a holodeck and like in elementary Dear Data, be served crumpets and tea that I can actually eat,
right,
taste, and be satisfied by them. That is something that is a physical object that then leaves with me when I leave the holodeck.
Ooh,
right?
That's a great point. Yeah.
So the reverse of that means that when I come to a holodeck and something goes awry, where, God forbid, there are fluids spilled, there's a thing that happens, the holodeck has to be smart enough to then clean that up or take care of itself somehow.
Store it away, yep.
Store it, yeah. So I just, the holodeck's got to meet me halfway.
Or a lower character has to take care of it.
That's the worst.
That is one of their jobs. So we have in one of our episodes, somebody gets assigned holodeck waste removal.
I mean, there's got to be like the Mike Rowe of Starfleet somewhere along the line, right?
Dirty jobs, right?
Jobs. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right,
but picture like the drain in a YMCA shower, like where it's sort of recessed.
Oh no. Oh, the future sounds terrible.
I bet you they're cursing Riker's name a lot in Homer's decks.
They have to be. Yeah. Now, okay, Larry Nemechek, Dr. Trek himself says one component of a holodeck is a replicator of solid matter. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. That the holodeck has to create solid matter. But then because it can create solid matter like a replicator, it has to be able to take matter back.
Deal with it.
I'm trying to save somebody from not having that job or not having the YMCA drain in the middle of it. I'm hoping for the best in the future.
But I think that's what we loved about Lower Decks as an episode. We got to see all of these characters that are behind the scenes. And I think that's this might be a pointed question, Chris, and I don't mean it to be, but I think that there has been some talk online about how this is sort of very similar to what the Orville was trying to bring to the table, showing a more, or I should say a less formal look at, this type of mentality, the Starfleet mentality. Everyone's walking around prim and proper with, very starched uniforms, but you can't, you have to suspend the disbelief of not every single person is going to be like that. You're going to have people like Chief O'Brien. They roll up their sleeves, they get to work, they get the job done, and they go back home and they kick back and have a beer. So was that something of concern that, like, say, you and all the writers were thinking about, like, are we going to get too heavily, compared to, say, like, what Seth MacFarlane, the Orville, was trying to do? Or is there going to be a very strong enough presence at the very beginning to say, hey, you know what? No, we're going with our own voice here, and we're very much going to be like in the presence of Star Trek, and fans will assuage our fans' fears from the very beginning.
What I think we have always strived to do is kind of have best of both worlds.
Hey, there we go. Ring a bell. Yeah.
With the way our episodes are often structured is that our bridge crew do treat themselves and do carry themselves like a, traditional Star Trek bridge crew. Our captain is very inspirational and, considers her ship the best ship in Starfleet, even if it is a lesser support ship. And the first officer, very much is in that Riker mold. So, like, the bridge crew stories often, like, that's what we sort of, the way we were breaking episodes is like, let's make sure there's a story that feels like a Star Trek episode. And then we'll see our guys, like our main, ensigns who are our four leads. It's their perspective on it, which sometimes they're not even aware of what the bridge crew is doing. Because if you think about it, like, half the Enterprise probably wouldn't be aware of what the away team is doing at any given mission because they're given their own details and their own assignments. And you could hear, like, wait, what's going on down there? I don't know, man. I think there's a Romulan involved. Like, information would get disseminated in, not always to the lower ranks. So that's kind of what we're trying to do is, like, this is a Star Trek show. And this is a very, well-performing Starfleet ship that just happens to be staffed by people who aren't always in the loop on stuff.
Carlos asked just a very straightforward question here, which is important. How long are the episodes? Are they half hour, 22 minutes? TV half hour, 22 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, 22 minutes with ads, depending on whether you buy CBS All Access without ads or
right. So just like the original animated series, TAS, which, by the way, you must have watched.
We did a lot. We did watch a lot in the writer's room in prep. Yeah, and there's a great book that's The Art of the Animated Series, which was a good reference. Whenever we'd be at a point like, one of the great things of animation is we're not bound by any sort of production constraints. So it's like we can make any character be any race, any species. So we'd often be like, what are we thinking for this guy? Well, let's open up the book. Oh, let's get a Harry Bem type of creature in there. Yeah, it was. That's one of the great advantages of this show, and one of the luxuries is that we can do anything. Hopefully, we're choosing the right things to do.
Nice. Chris throws out an interesting question here. He says, serious question, if there's enough love for the Orville and Lower Decks, why not a new crew TNG type show? And I'll throw that out to you guys, Norman and Chris. I kind of have my own thoughts about that, but if either of you want to hop on that.
What do you think, Norman? What do you think, like?
Well, there was something that we've said at the very beginning of the episode, is that between Lower Decks and with Star Trek Discovery Season 3, there's going to be X amount of weekly new episodes of Star Trek. And then, of course, Nickelodeon, during San Diego Comic-Con panel, they kind of they teased, Star Trek Prodigy. So you have all of these new Star Trek properties that are coming up, like one right after the other. And sometimes, and I rarely do this on Mission Log Live, but I'm going to do a Shatner thing,
Yeah,
but sometimes, like, too much of anything, even love, is not necessarily a good thing, and that's true. Like, you have to be very careful of balancing how many properties that you're going to have, and expect the audience to consume and digest, and especially at the rate that we do it now, because you don't want to have overload, and you don't want to have, like, everyone on the social media airwaves waiting to post either their feedback or responses, waiting for other people who haven't binge watched it, waiting for other people who won't be able to get to it because they're not doing CBS All Access per se. Mm-hmm. So there's a very fine balancing act of having so many, you do the hands, so many properties all at once, not giving enough people breathing room. I mean, you just can't chug a great, keg of Klingon blood wine without having to savor some of the finer points of it. So anyway, that's how I feel about it. I love getting as much Star Trek as I possibly can, but I can only eat so many strips of bacon and not have it be special anymore. Right?
Yeah. I kind of, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, Mike McMahon, the creator of our show, like, often says Star Trek should be a public utility. Like, there should always be a Star Trek running. It should be, it should be a government oversight where we should always have, like, it's just something that it's so comforting and so, you can do it in different genres, you can do it in different styles, but, like, the idea of that unifying, this is Star Trek, is so good and something to depend on in our, we're so scattered and so fragmented in what we watch, and we'd like to have that unifying thing that's, stood the test of time for 50 years is really nice to have that. There's a Star Trek on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like 24th century Star Trek, particularly TNG Trek, and then you had DS9 and Voyager, the TNG movies. There's a lot that takes place in that period. So to me, if you're going to do it, then doing something like Lower Decks that's a little bit of a curveball, it's just, outside of that, totally different format, totally different tone. This gets to be the comedy Star Trek. To me, that's the way to do it. I don't think I would have the patience to see another series set in that same, say, like 20-year period that it was a serious, Star Trek in big capital letters type show. I also feel like that stuff was long enough ago, starting in 1987, that it feels a little dated to me, but it's also recent enough, meaning the last movie of that period was, 2001, somewhere around there, that I sort of need that to be away for a while before maybe I can think about it as what Star Trek is anymore. So I'm glad for Lower Decks to be sort of taking on that period where there is so much Star Trek, where it's so familiar to a wide audience, but just doing something completely different,
Hopefully it fills a niche for people who do miss a TNG sensibility, because we were really careful about making sure, the LCARs looked TNG era appropriate, and the ships, hopefully look like the shuttlecraft all look like the Enterprise shuttles, and we put our own spin on it, but that really was our jumping off point. We were lucky enough to have the Okudas come in to watch the episodes and just give some pointers, and they were invaluable on cleaning up our LCARS displays. They sort of talked about how they really had a system for like training your eye to what you needed to see on those readouts.
Nice.
And it really helped us like refine the amount of colors used and the amount of, how you would edit format some of that stuff. So hopefully the aesthetic and, look and feel of the show does sate that TNG appetite.
Very cool.
One of the things that I think that myself, I mean, I'll be 100% honest. Like I do it, a lot of other people do it. When they see a certain style, especially when it comes to animation, some people will just automatically assume that the tone and the tenor of the project that's assuming this animation style is going to be somewhat similar in, like I said, in tone and in tenor. So when you see something like a Rick and Morty style, you're thinking like, oh, is it going to be like Rick and Morty, and it's going to be Rick and Morty plus Star Trek? So in the kind of like in the realm of social media, that's all the sound bites that you're really hearing. And I'd love to hear like how you and other the writers and producers and people that are involved in the project are kind of slowly trying to demystify or debunk what people's assumptions are, when they first see like the trailer, because that's kind of the reaction that I've been reading about online.
Yeah, I knew. Mike knew, for better or for worse, that would be sort of the first take because of his Rick and Morty pedigree. That would be a very easy way to just sum it up as, oh, so it's Rick and Morty Star Trek. But he's been very careful and concerted about making this feel of its own type and style. Yes, there are some, it is adult animations. There is going to be some things that, are irreverent or extreme, maybe even violent, but it's definitely not a Rick and Morty clone. And in fact, we shut down a lot of episode ideas because you'd go, that was something we did on Rick and Morty. No, that's a little too close to a thing, a interventional portal that Rick had. So he was very determined to make sure this feels like its own thing. And I think he's been very successful in making it feel that it has heart, which I don't know if that show often, it's a fairly cynical show, Rick and Morty. And I think our show really does love its characters. It really does love Starfleet. It really does love everything that all the series before it kind of put out. They may, they may be upset at having to scrape carbon off of slightly harder carbon as one of their jobs, but like they do love their place in Starfleet and like want to be the best they can. So I think it's going to come through that this show was made with a real love for Star Trek.
Hey, by the way, before we jump to our ad real quick, Chris asks, is it good for kids?
It's funny you asked. I just watched the finale of season 1. We were looking at the final color version for edits today, and I watched it with my 6-year-old. He loved it. I hadn't shown him anything previously, and he was right on board with it. Keep in mind, my 6-year-old is fearless and puts himself into dangerous situations all the time, lives for, jumping off the swing set at the highest point and holding his breath longer than he probably should. So he does like a thrill. He's a thrill chaser. So Mike's 6-year-old, he's got a kid about the same age. He found the pilot too scary. So
okay. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go, Chris. Good luck. Hey, really quickly. Hey, look what I've got, Norman. And
look
people
at
who are
that.
watching the show. Yeah, it's the Shinju. Yeah, we love that. NCC 1227 from Discovery. The long lost Shinju. It is nice. It's so here. I'm going to take it off the base. There we go.
Come on, make the sounds. Do the sounds.
Whoosh. Okay.
Perfect.
No, we're not going to.
You're hired.
So we just want to take a moment to tell you about Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection, officially authorized by CBS Studios. Of course, the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection is available only from Eagle Moss Hero Collector. This special collection features brand new ship concepts and designs from both seasons of CBS Star Trek Discovery and will include ships from the upcoming season 3. Each has gone through extensive reference study and has been reproduced under the supervision of Star Trek expert Ben Robinson for accuracy and detail.
So when you get your first ship, you'll notice that the USS Buran, the NCC 1422, it's the larger size. It's like over 9 inches long, from the front of the saucer to the quad style nacelles. Everyone knows the Buran, right? So all the ships in this collection are this larger scale, and they're made of the same materials that you get from the Eagle Moss ships. You get the die-cast metal sections and the ABS materials sections are hand-painted, just like the other Eagle Moss ships that you have collected. And I know many of you have. I know that, again, you can't see my background, but if it wasn't for this background, it'd be a wall of Eagle Moss ships.
So many ships. It's just a room full of ships at Norman's.
So many ships. I have my own Starfleet. Each ship also comes with a display base, as you can see, just like all the other Eagle Moss ships. And for all of you collectors out there who love poring over all the details, it comes with the magazine, that comes with all of the concept art and interviews with the designers, things of that nature. So you can read about all of that like Scotty does with his technical journals when he's on shore leave or stuck in jail after punching somebody. So
poor guy. Hey, so you can start your collection with the Cardenas class, USS Buran, NCC 1422. That was the one you saw on screen there just a moment ago. Destroyed by Captain Lorca in the opening episodes of Star Trek Discovery. Available to subscribers through this special Mission Log Live offer for only $9.95 with free shipping when you go to herocollector.com/missionlog and sign up with the promo code MISSION at checkout.
And then you can also see other additional models, including the iconic USS Discovery, the NCC 1031, which we all pretty much know, right? And that's a very long, beautiful model. The USS Kerala, the NCC 1255, and the reimagined Klingon Bird of Prey that we all understand and know from Discovery, and so many more. And then each ship will appear monthly at an exclusive 20% discount off the standard retail price, also with free shipping. Free shipping, right? So that's better than a mycelial network.
that is even better.
And also, subscribers are also entitled to the free gifts with over $100 and may cancel their subscriptions at any time if you really want to. I don't think you should, but if you really want to. So full details of this can be found at www.herocollector.com/missionlog.
Now, fans who would like to purchase their favorite ships individually, you may do that either online at shop.eaglemoss.com or at your local comic book shop for the regular price of $54.95 each. But come on, you saw the Buran and you saw me so happy here holding the Shinju. I mean, get the Buran for $9.95. Come on, and then subscribe, 20% off. You know you want to. I know Norman does. I know Chris does, and he just saw it. So, yeah.
Get that Buran.
It's cool, right? I mean, who doesn't want a ship that's got 4 nacelles? That's 2 better than
it's
all
like
the
Stargazer territory, right?
Yes, exactly.
And not spoiling any spoiling, but, cross fingers, but hopefully we'll get to see a USS Cerritos up there one day.
Two-dimensional.
There we go. Yes. Yeah.
Two-dimensional Cerritos.
I would love that.
Hand-painted with quality ABS plastic and machine parts.
Yes.
Let me ask you guys this. Okay, so if there's a fire in your place, you can only save 1 Eagle Moss. What are you grabbing?
TOS Enterprise. Yeah.
Oh, my. You're the TOS.
But behind me, yeah. So behind me, that giant one that is made by somebody. That was made for Rod. All these things that are lighted up, those were made for Rod by a fan, and did those It's all from Malpass Models. Mike Malpass did those, but down there, there's a TOS Enterprise. It is just so nice. So that would be the one. Yeah,
mine would be the Doug Drexler NX-01 refit.
Oh yeah, that's rad. That's a rad ship.
For Eagle Moss, it's my favorite ship that they've done so far.
Yeah, that is cool. Hey, so much more to get to, so much more to talk about, including the poll question that we asked everybody to chime in with the character that they want to see on the animated show on Lower Decks. But we have a caller standing by. We have Chris, who's joining us. And Chris is joined. It's not just Chris. Chris is joined by his own avatar from Lower Decks.
Oh, I want one.
Chris, welcome to the show. How's it going, man?
Hey, Chris. Hit your mic, Chris.
Oh, no, we can't hear you. You are muted.
There we go.
There you are.
Yeah.
Hey there.
All right. Hey, good to see everybody. A friend of mine, she did one of these for herself, and I saw her post it, and I promptly got in the comments. I was like, I need one of these for me. Thank you very much. And so, there's me. I had It is gone now. I had a little glass of blue gin, but I.
Well gone at this point.
But yeah, so very excited to have this. Very excited for the show. I have two questions, one of which is a quick one and one that's a more serious one. My quick first one is, when are we getting crossover promotion with world-renowned Cerritos Auto Square? I need that today.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that'll be the test of time whether we can take the name Cerritos and make it more synonymous with our show than, yes, Cerritos Auto Square.
Yep.
Hit the 605 down South Street. Yeah, sorry.
Exactly.
Man.
Exactly. And my actual question was, I was curious, sort of, what's the writer's room like? I'm guessing you, of all guys, have different sort of forms of comedy. Like, I think of, like, one of my other favorite shows is Arrested Development, and they're very much sort of like a recurring gag type thing. So I'm curious what the room is like and how you sort of craft the type of comedy for the show, both in general and sort of episode by episode. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'd always start with character. Like, a lot of the first season was trying to figure out, like, who our characters were, because we only had the pilot to kind of go off of, and then it was big discussions of, like, what they want, where do they see themselves in Starfleet, what's important to them, and sort of using those wants as the drives for, like, okay, well, he'd be, like a character like Boimler, who's, like, super focused on being a captain and getting promotions and just doing things by the book. Like, that's a fun, nervous, neurotic energy we can use. So you just want to see things go wrong for him in his goals to try and move ahead. What's the worst thing that could happen to him on an escort run? Let's explore that. What would be, if you see someone get a promotion instead of him, like, how does he react to that? So just using their, like, emotional reactions is often the first way we get into stuff. And then in terms of, like, what's the greater sci-fi background to it? That was a lot of fun discussions of, like, well, we can do anything here. What about, what haven't we seen in Star Trek, or what have we seen that we could do a new twist on? So a lot of the sci-fi A stories that the bridge crew is involved in were bigger sort of events that we could have fun with and just populate our guys having their emotional stories while this big thing's happening in the background. And then by the end, hopefully it all feels like it is a episode together. That's a great question.
Thank you. No, yeah, super excited. There seems to be, based on the, like, 3 minutes of trailer I've seen so far, you guys really seem to have a sort of earnestness about it, which I like in my sci-fi comedy. There's a difference between, like, poking fun at something and making fun of something. And I think you guys, you know where the line is, and so I'm excited to see sort of a new fun, lighthearted take. Very, very
good.
excited.
I'm glad that comes through. What's your specialty in sciences?
I'd probably be something astrophysics, space, star. That's always been something I've liked. Yeah, working out in the astrometrics lab. I imagine little ensign in me is doing a lot of spreadsheets, lots of sitting in front of a pad. Yeah, typing up.
Pushing pads,
Yeah.
Hence the blue drink, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Hey, very important question that was in the chat, pertinent to many of us here, and your avatar, Chris. Is there facial hair allowed in this version of the 24th century?
Big time. Our first officer, Ransom, has a persistent 5 o'clock shadow. So
good. Okay. All right. So he hasn't gone full Riker, but he's getting there.
He's on the path. Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah. Mine's got that similar, I think, because that's just what we saw based on what little we had. Because I have, like, an actual beard, but I think that's just the way she drew it, which I like it. It comes across really well. I'm also a big fan of Bajoran security guy's mustache. He's rocking a real good stash. I dig it.
Yeah, right.
Very good. Excellent. Chris, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Always a pleasure.
Of course.
Good seeing you, Chris.
Take care.
Yeah, you as well.
Hey, before we, I think we have a couple other people who are trying to call in, but before we go there, something really important. Before Chris came on the show tonight, he said, I want to ask the audience something. And that question was, for all of you, what TNG side character would you like to see animated into Lower Decks? Mm-hmm. So we posed that to all of you on Facebook and on Twitter, and you got back to us. And wow, just a really interesting list. Interesting by who made it, interesting by who didn't make it. Yeah. So we'll go through some of those. Now, hands down, I thought this was interesting. Hands down, the person who got the most mentions was Reg Barclay.
Sure.
Yeah. There must be, just a lot of love for Dwight Schultz and the A-Team. And they wanted to see
Barclay's such a sympathetic character, because I think we've all been there where you just feel like you just can't put the right foot forward. Right. I'm thinking of like Hollow Pursuits. Was that the first when we first meet Barclay?
I think that maybe. Yeah.
We watched that a lot, and it sort of became the inspiration for one of our episodes, because you just feel for the guy who just feels socially awkward and just feels more at home amongst his holodeck creations.
Yes.
So I think like Barclay is such a great human character that and we've talked about like what would Barclay be doing in 2380? Like maybe he has ascended the ranks. Maybe he's put that best foot forward. And he was integral in getting Voyager back. So I can see the Federation, seeing a captain or a special, specialist Barclay.
Sure. Let's see. We also had votes for Pac-Leds.
I still want to see the Pac-Leds in this style.
God. Like I think you guys are right on the path of like what our wheelhouse was, because we loved Samaritan Snare. The Pac-Leds are such a funny race that we had a lot of fun talking about them.
Oh yeah. I'm a big fan of this one, actually. Mott the Barber. I really wish Mott would be a part of this. And there are a lot of votes for Mott, plus the suggested spinoff of Too Many Bolians. It's just a whole bunch of Bolians who are all barbers.
I love that. Yeah, we've talked about like what is it with Bolians? They're bald, yet they're amazing barbers.
Right. They're the best, yeah. Now, of course, because we're a big fan of hers and she is a regular viewer of this show, Lieutenant J, played by Tracy Lucoco. Now, if Tracy were on, though, she would have to speak. Finally, Lieutenant J would have to have a voice. So we would like to see her. Dr. Solar.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And if you remember with Dr. Solar, like we would hear her called over the intercom every now and then, but does she ever show up again? No. Like that just seems cruel.
So we have her come on and do some like real deal medical stuff on our ship and be like,
yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah. And then not surprised at all that this was mentioned, Livingston Picard.
Oh, wow.
Got suggested. Yeah. Now
with Patrick Stewart's voice.
Yes. Now, what I'm shocked about is I made my own list, and actually have Norman and Earl here of people who did not get mentioned to bring back. Okay, so I'd like to share that with you. And look, I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying that us working for Roddenberry and being co-producers on this, I'm not saying that has any sway at all.
Right.
I'm just saying that, this is what's on our minds. Okay, so first of all, Ronan, the green mist that gets it on with Dr. Crusher.
Oh, is that the Sub Rosa ghost?
Yeah. Okay. So
sure.
No mention of Ronan. We have all the Bring Lloydie from Up the Long Ladder. Just all the Irish stereotypes.
Oh, right. Yeah. The whole village of displaced.
Oh, yeah. Chickens and all. We never got to see the dolphins that are on board in the cetacean lab.
Very important cetacean ops officers.
Yes. So they could be there. Parallax.
They got Shanghai to DSV to sequest.
Yeah. Let's see. You had the Parallax floating head from Cost of Living. who's hanging out at the hot tub with Alexander and Loxana. That guy has to have a life. You had Mick Fleetwood is still alive. He could come back and be the Antedian fish person who was the assassin.
Yeah.
Joe Piscopo.
As the comedian?
As Joe Piscopo. Yeah.
Oh my God, that scene with Data is everything you don't want for comedy. Holy shit. That was we watched that in the room. Like Data wants to learn to be funny, and his model is oh God. It's Joe Piscopo doing Jerry Lewis.
Yeah.
Much cringe.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Now, Norman, you brought up, I think, what was probably the most inspired out of all of these. That's Loxana's silver luggage. And that was the gift box face played by Armin Shimmerman.
Right.
Fantastic call. Great call. We've talked about the Betazoid gift box before. Yeah, it's a fantastic. What a great choice they made. Like, how can we deliver this message? Oh, I know, an anthropomorphized gift box.
Yeah. Okay, and that exists. So there has to be more of those that exist.
Totally.
Could you imagine that? It just all of a sudden, something just pops up. Silver luggage starts talking to somebody. One of the ensigns. Take care of this luggage. And then they become like besties. Like, hey, man, what's going on?
That is a perfect Lower Deck story, because that is exactly what they would be entrusted to do. And that is how the story would go. And then they would eventually have to part ways. But then we find out that the gift box actually has some duplicitous agenda and is trying to use them to get close to the warp core codes or something.
Yeah, kind of like shield frequencies or like something along that line. And like, but I trusted you. You were my friend.
There you go. That's a Lower Decks episode.
What does a gift box need with a starship? That's that'll be the next great line in Star Trek. And Earl actually called it the puppies. The puppies. There are so many puppies all over Next Gen. You had the female Q, played by Olivia Dabo. She conjures up some puppies. You had puppies in one of the classrooms. There were just puppies all over the ship, and it never got answered where they came from or where they went afterward. So that's an important one. But actually, the very best answer on Facebook was from Jesse, who said, our trusty hosts, your mission log host, peeling replicated potatoes in the background. Jesse, you're not wrong. But it never answers the question, why don't they just replicate peeled potatoes? What the hell?
We did have a lot of discussions about the specificity. Just cut out the middleman, right?
Yeah.
Is it like the tradition, like the time-honored tradition of like, say Jake Sisko's like, I don't want to go back to New Orleans. Grandpa's going to make me peel potatoes again. Right?
Right. That's
no vacation for me.
Right? No. Oh, man. Hey, Chris, you mentioned Mike McMahon a little while ago, and for the people who don't know, Mike is the executive producer on the show, and he does, of course, have that credibility coming from Rick and Morty, but maybe it hasn't gotten out there enough to Star Trek fans to know that he wrote the Star Trek Season 8 Twitter handle, which then turned into a book. And I don't know the guy, but I just picture him walking around an office just spouting out all kinds of TNG knowledge. Like that is his wheelhouse more than anybody.
He definitely did his due diligence to do a whole unaired 8th season, which I love his take on it. It was these were basically the B stories where the 8th season would be like Data and Geordi want to learn how to make hand churned ice cream. Like that is their journey for that episode. Things like that. The book is called Warped. It's the unaired 8th season, and surprisingly we have not dipped into it as much as we could. Maybe if we get more seasons, we're desperate for stories. We're like, hey, Mike, pull out the book and cannibalize it.
I'm surprised. That really does sound like exactly the kind of thing that Lower Decks would probably do. It's like, go for the ice cream story. We haven't done it yet. So
because that's what he said most appealed to him about TNG was you'd have these, sort of high stakes A stories of diplomacy and, alien engagement and first contact. But then meanwhile, you'd have Data just wants to be in a play or, Geordi's trying to get a date, like the very human sort of drives and wants for people that we'd see play out. So that is where we live in those B stories. Those B stories are our A stories. We want to see our characters like going for their very human, relatable wants. And then meanwhile, there's a big sci-fi thing happening in the background.
Right. Yeah.
The thing is, I think like Tilly she's so close to a Lower Decks type character because that's where she's all up front, like with her feelings, with the way that she interacts with people. Obviously, she speaks her mind, but she's very much like in that vein of something extraordinary is going to happen to someone so ordinary, right?
Right. Yeah. She was actually
that's
floated.
Where the comedy lies.
Yeah, that actress was floated as a potential voice for our Tendi character because she is that same like bright-eyed, like wide-eyed wonderment sort of character, and I think that it's great. That's a great entry point for that ensign level. We have Noelle Wells does that part, and she does it so great because she just brings this like I can't believe it, I'm on a starship like enthusiasm for it. It's really engaging. That's the character my son, the fearless 6-year-old, loves the most. He's like, this is a show about a green girl and her friends. And I was like, no, you're not wrong.
Hey, I want to ask you, we're getting on to the last few minutes, and I want to get a sense of what your production schedule is like. Some animated projects take a super long time. Others, you mentioned South Park, and sometimes they're changing a joke like the day before something airs. Were you all cognizant of thinking like, oh, okay, this is coming out 6 months later, a year later, something can be timely but not too timely? Or are you really just writing to the theme overall to make it a little more timeless? Like, what was that balance for you guys?
I think it was a fairly traditional like animation schedule where it was almost like a year is about the turnover time because we started writing the first season in March of last year, and then we were working on the first initial animatics through the winter, and then the color versions started coming in January or February of this year, and sort of hit a crunch where, when we went on COVID lockdown, where everyone work all started being done from home, which is, one of the great benefits of animation is that it is a show that can be produced from home remotely. So we were able to keep going, but there was still a lot of additional ADR we had to get from the actors, voice stuff that we had to like go through a lot of different hoops to have those last couple episodes, those last few parts get nailed down with like home records where we was socially distant. An engineer from a company would set up like basically like a phone booth padded with a mic in one of the actors' homes. They'd go in then alone and do it over, a Zoom basically. And we'd listen in on a link and try and give them feedback with like a 10-second delay. But we got it. We got all those, all the episodes are done. Everything is being finalized now. So the first season will be delivered on time. And coming up in the next 10 weeks. Now the second season, we're writing it right now. We started the writer's room the first day of the stay-at-home order in March.
Oh, wow.
So we've done this entire season via Zoom room. And it's been actually good. You can get a lot done. It's amazing what we can do with the technology we have now, because you really feel like you don't miss much being in an office, and we're just smarter about the time we have. You don't feel like we have to while away the hours going to an office, so you just make good use of a couple of quick bursts, a couple hours per day, and then you do a lot of writing outside. And now the first animatics are being done for the first couple episodes of season 2, and we'll figure out how to record these actors in the next couple months and make the show.
All right. right. Very cool. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So many people in the chat are just saying they're really excited, can't wait. And Rick says, I love Trek. I love Rick and Morty. I can't wait to see if I'll love Lower Decks. What are the odds? Probably, hopefully pretty good, Rick.
Yeah, Rick. We can't get you, Rick. I don't know what we can do.
Right. And hey, we teased it at the beginning, and I just want to let everybody know I'm so happy. Norman's so happy. Earl's so happy that starting next week, our guest co-host for Mission Log Live, while we cover Lower Decks and recover.
No, you're going to recover. It's going to be a fucking ride.
That will be Ashley V. Robinson, and you may know her from her current podcast, Geek History Lesson, but you will definitely know her as the producer, writer, and star of the series Red Shirt Diaries. So we are super excited to be joined by a Trek fan and someone who knows a thing or two about Star Trek and comedy. Ashley will be here next week and then every week until we wrap Lower Decks. So we will all welcome her next week. Guys, thank you. Norman, always a pleasure. Chris, great to see you.
Awesome talking with you guys. Thank you.
You were wearing last year when I met you the same week.
Let's do it again next year. Yeah.
We'll do it again in a year. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Earl. Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer, Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live is by the inevitable Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network, including not just Mission Log, but also Women at Warp, Priority One, The Trek Files, your daily Star Trek news, and Shabam.
Shabam!
If you would like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/Mission Log. Thank you to everyone who joined us live or later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to talking with you next week.